American warplanes surround Cuba and put the island under military pressure as Trump pushes Raul Castro toward imprisonment, turning the Caribbean sky into a direct warning against the communist regime. On this May 16th, 2026, the actions of the United States leave Havana cornered from both outside and inside. Surveillance aircraft patrol the coast, and military missions monitor signals, routes, and communications. Meanwhile, the dictatorship faces blackouts, fuel shortages, and protests in the streets. Trump is not treating Cuba as a distant crisis. He is using the weight of intelligence, military aviation, and American justice to target the living symbol of the old Cuban revolution. Raul Castro carries the regime's past on his shoulders and is now linked to the downing of humanitarian aircraft that killed 4 Cuban exiles in 1990. 1996. The message to Havana is simple and ominous. American planes watch the island from above, the White House tightens its grip on the ground, and the last great Castro no longer seems untouchable. I'll tell you all about it in a moment, but right now you'll want to subscribe to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information in the best journalistic quality you've ever seen, with the credibility standard of Milson Alves. The American activity gained momentum after intelligence flights were identified near the Cuban coast. The investigation cited by England and the international press points to at least 25 military surveillance missions since February, with aircraft such as the P-8 Poseidon RC-135V Rivet Joint and MQ-4C Triton drones. Those planes weren't there for a parade. They are used to observe the sea, intercept signals, map communications, and measure the regime's reaction. Some of these flights were concentrated near Havana and Santiago de Cunha, in some cases less than 40 miles from the coast. While the planes surround the island from the outside, Trump increases the pressure on the island from within. The American government increased pressure on Cuba by threatening sanctions against nations that supplied Havana with fuel. The result showed up in the streets. Neighborhoods in the capital were left without power for up to 22 hours a day. Residents banged pots, blocked roads, and protested against blackouts that are already affecting food, transportation, sleep, work, and hospitals. The Cuban Minister of Energy admitted that the nation ran out of diesel, fuel oil, and reserves. The Cuban regime tried to contain the situation with control and silence, but the crisis left the office and went out onto the streets. In Havana, hundreds of people were seen in the streets demanding electricity. Videos shared on social media show Cubans throwing stones at a police car during the protests in Cuba. Videos released reveal a serious rift between the population and the regime. In a dictatorship where the repressive forces are known for their harsh response, going out into the streets, confronting state agents, and attacking a patrol car shows that fear has started to crack. The revolt is growing because the population is experiencing prolonged blackouts, fuel shortages, blocked streets, and basic services collapsing, while Havana tries to maintain control with police surveillance and intimidation. When the people face the police car head-on, even knowing the risks they are taking, the political message is brutal. The crisis has already gone beyond the electrical grid and reached the heart of Cuban communist power. And the regime realizes that repression no longer solves the problem of gasoline, the heat, and food spoiling inside people's homes. It was in this environment that John Ratcliffe landed in Havana. The CIA director's visit was uncommon and sent a strong political message. According to Reuters, he brought a message from Trump. The United States is willing to discuss the economy and security, but only if Cuba makes fundamental changes. The conversation involved Cuban officials connected to internal affairs, intelligence, and security. In simple terms, Washington left the door open, but with a clear price. The regime needs to change or it will remain isolated, pressured, and out of breath. The arrest of Castro comes into play through the courts. The Trump administration plans to announce in Miami criminal charges against Raul Castro on May 20th, 2026. The case arises from the 1996 shootdown of Brothers to the Rescue planes. 4 Cuban exiles died when Cuban fighter jets shot down the aircraft. At the time, Raul Castro was the Minister of Defense. The indictment still depends on approval by a grand jury, but the mere advancement of the case already turns the name Castro into a central target because it shows how Trump is using an old wound to open a new front. Instead of treating Raul Castro as just an influential retiree from the Cuban Revolution, Washington is trying to place him at the center of a crime that has never left the memory of Cuban exiles in Miami. Raul Castro no longer holds the presidency, but he still carries symbolic weight within Cuban communism. He is Fidel's brother, was a military chief, led the transition of power, and remains a historical figure of the regime. That's why the American move is not targeting just a 94-year-old man. It targets the moral shield of the Castro family. The message is harsh. Age, last name, and revolutionary past are no longer enough to prevent criminal prosecution outside the island. The fuel crisis makes the pressure even more suffocating. On May 15, 2026, Cuba almost doubled the price of gasoline and diesel, but several gas stations in Havana remained closed. Premium gasoline was priced at $2 per liter, regular gasoline at $1.80, and diesel at $2. Even so, many drivers didn't even know where to buy it. According to Reuters, Cuba hadn't received new shipments of oil since a Russian ship delivered some at the end of March, and that fuel ran out at the beginning of May. This is the point that makes the squeeze even tighter for Havana. Russia can't support Cuba like it used to. Venezuela no longer provides the relief that sustained the island for years. China watches with cold calculation. And Trump noticed the opening. American power doesn't need to start with soldiers entering Havana. It starts when planes appear on the radar, when a CIA director lands at the airport, when fuel disappears, when the population protests, and when a Castro faces criminal charges in the United States. The Cuban government claims it doesn't threaten U.S. national security and seeks cooperation between security agencies. But Washington sees it differently. The White House sees Cuba as a haven for adversaries, a base of communist influence, and a source of instability in the hemisphere. That's why Ratcliffe talked about security, intelligence, and economic stability in the same conversation. The issue isn't just energy, it's about political control of the island. Now the next step has a set date. On May 20th, 2026, if the prosecution moves forward as expected, Miami is set to become the legal battleground against Raul Castro. Havana will have to react while facing blackouts, protests, closed stations, and American aircraft watching the coast. Trump pushed the regime into a narrow choice: negotiate deep changes or continue sinking under economic pressure, military surveillance, and legal pressure. I'm Milson Alves, an international affairs specialist, and my goal is to keep you accurately informed every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe, and check the comments at the end to engage more with the Milson Alves community.